A month into the offseason, the White Sox still have plenty of questions to answer. Let's discuss what they are next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the White Sox so far have temporarily solved their right field issue, brought in a promising manager and a director of hitting, but there are still some issues that the front office must resolve during the rest of the offseason that I'll discuss in the first segment. Then, is it worth paying attention to what the rest of the AL Central does this offseason? I'll discuss that in the second segment. And then the White Sox added some more spring training competition to the outfield. I'll discuss if this might be a sneaky good move in the final segment. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so far the biggest acquisition this offseason is Will Venable being hired as the manager, Ryan Fuller being named the director of hitting, and also the assumption is now that they signed Austin Slater, he'll platoon in right field with Dominic Fletcher. Although Slater kind of ruined that move when he said he was the main target in free agency for the White Sox. But obviously it would be nice if the White Sox were spending like, say, the Los Angeles Angels. Not saying that would make the Angels like the Kansas City Royals, is I think the Angels are trying to foolishly replicate what what Kansas City did last offseason, especially since they need to recognize that Mike Trout is no longer available enough to basically have a Bobby Witt Jr. impact season. A lot of people keep on saying, well, the Royals spent so much money last offseason, or they spent wisely in free agency. Yeah, but you can also get over the hump when you've got a stud like Bobby Witt Jr. And Mike Trout was once that guy, but he's always hurt. So, well, it's nice that the Angels have made at least moves that ensure that they would not lose a franchise record amount of games like they did, I believe. And it would be nice if the Sox kind of made those same additions to at least calm our fears that there's no way that they're going to flirt with 121 losses. I get why the Sox are obviously not, spending like the Angels. And especially, even though it's sad, payroll, I guess, needs to be cut because, who knows what the TV revenue will be like since CHSN is still not on Comcast. And who's going to pay $19.99 a month to stream games for a team that just lost a record 121 games? Because you got to remember, the owner still is obsessed with the cable grift. And right now, he doesn't have the cable grift anymore. But obviously, moves still need to be made if the team hopes to at least get back to 2023 levels, which is still sad because it means you're going to have another 100-loss season. But the expectation should be at the very minimal for this team. And you can even say maybe there shouldn't just be any expectations at all, which I sort of agree with. But the minimal expectation should be that this team should not flirt with 120 losses ever again. Don't put us remaining Sox fans through that pain. Don't even put the Sox fans who have completely checked out but like to check in every now and again, or at least look at it and be like, oh, God, I'm glad I don't have to deal with this, or glad I'm so apathetic. Don't keep furthering the apathy, for example. Just don't do that. Stay away from 121 losses. And if you don't think it can get worse, yes, it can. Because remember, one of the few records the White Sox didn't break was the worst winning percentage. They flirted potentially with finishing with 39 wins. Remember that. They needed the Angels to basically be like, we quit the last week of the season, and a hungover Detroit Tigers team to avoid losing, only winning 39 games. That's what they needed, folks. But there are questions, obviously, that still need to be answered, and you would hopefully hope that it's answered with the best possible outcome off the scrap heap or the discount rack in free agency, or obviously a bold trade. So obviously the first one is, can Chris Getz meet the moment in the Garrett Crochet trade? As sad as it is, it looks like more and more every day that the White Sox are going to trade their ace. And it can't be an Eric Fetty-like return in that deal. I mean, Getz completely botched that asset. He did not meet the moment. And it can't be a bunch of pitchers like what he got in the Dylan Cease trade. He should be complimented for the Dylan Cease move. You got Drew Thorpe and Jairo Iriarte. Zavala is the other piece in the, as a hitter. Very concerned that he might be a bust, but even if you get 2 of 3, that ain't bad. But the Sox don't need pitching. They need positional prospects right now, or young hitters like Weiler Abreu or Tristan Cassius. Hopefully I got that name right. You got to get bats in this one and impact, foundational. And then hopefully they stay healthy. You would love to get a Yoan Moncada at the time return, and then you hope that, that player actually stays healthy and produces and isn't inconsistent and always injured, like what happened in the Yoan Moncada, in the Chris Sale trade. Can you get the best possible deal from the Red Sox, from Baltimore or Philadelphia? And the other thing is, you got to deal them. It can't be, to me, it is zero sum. You either have to extend them or deal them. You can't just bring them back as your opening day starter and just be like, well, business as usual. You either need to say, this is our foundational piece of our rotation, and what we're going to do is, yes, we're going to use pitching and defense to eventually get back to being competitive. And we'll find our Jose Ramirez at some point, or our Bobby Witt Jr. through the draft, for example, or through international free agency. We'll find that. We'll get there by 2027. But Garrett Crochet is our guy. He's our rock. Or you got to trade him, because this is at where his value will be at its highest. It might still be high at the trade deadline in 2025, but because you can still sell 2 seasons, but this is it. Otherwise, you're looking at, at least in terms of what you can get back in assets. If you hold on to him and trade him, say, next offseason, and say he does have another good season, you're looking at maybe the Corbin Burns deal, which wasn't bad, but you need quality and quantity. And right now, I think you can get that both with Garrett Crochet at this time. The other thing is, I don't want to be duped by the Dodgers again. Stay away from the Dodgers. Put, Freeman on the on the block list. Somebody in the front office has to make sure Chris Getz is not on the phone with Andrew Friedman. He fleeced him. He Jedi mind tricked him. I also don't want Alec Boehm from the Phillies. The Phillies are trying to get rid of him so that they can, sign Alex Bregman. I don't want that problem in the Sox clubhouse. And now that you're just trading one 2-year problem for another. You're basically trading one ship passing in the night for another, because Boehm only has 2 more years of club control. So that's the first one. Then what's going to be done with the bullpen? I would still prefer, the Sox not go for a veteran starting pitcher in free agency. I'd rather use that, in this time, I'd rather actually make an exception to use their limited financial resources to add a bullpen arm. I've talked about it every day, or have probably heard me say it. The trade deadline was very kind to bullpen arms. So I love to load up on some veterans, obviously only on 1 year, or 1 year in a club option, not like what happened in the previous rebuild where they were signing, bullpen arms to 3-year deals or 2-year deals and player options or vesting options. Don't do that. 1 year or 2 years, but that second year being an option. And then that way you can trade them, because now that you blew way too many leads, you do need to address your bullpen. One of the reasons why you had that record-breaking season of awfulness was because the bullpen couldn't hold leads. You blew 54 leads, and I believe the bullpen blew 47 of them. Also, it's a sign that maybe, this could be a measuring stick that Chris Getz might be a decent GM, because even decent GMs can build an effective bullpen. It's one of the things that they have to do, because, again, bullpen arms, you're usually finding off the scrap heap. You're trying to buy low, sell high, that type of stuff. This is where, we can actually maybe get a gauge, more of a gauge on Chris Getz. I mean, right now, he's done the easy part. He's overhauled the front office. He's finally convinced the owner it's time to join baseball in 2024. Okay? And he's made some, hiring Will Venable, an impressive hire, bringing in a director of hitting and bringing in a director of pitching. Very good, because now you're going to have established standards throughout the entire organization. But what you got to do now is you got to be able to bring in players, show that you can, scout, show that you can find talent, that your front office can actually produce fruit. And one of the ways is building a bullpen. Or do you use the bullpen to develop some of these young arms at the major league level? Jairo Uriarte, Kai Bush, they fit that bill that maybe you might want to have them start out in the bullpen. Maybe even Nick Nastrini, get those guys, so I just want to see what do they do with the bullpen. And how about catcher? Josh Nelson, who was on the show about last month, saying the team wants to sign a catcher in free agency. But if you don't sign anyone, is Edgar Caro going to start the season at the big league level? I'd prefer that than Chucky Robinson, because right now it's Corey Lee and Chucky Robinson. I don't want to go through that again. Texas just took a catcher off the market. It's starting to, get thinner. So do you go sign a veteran like, say, Carson Kelly, based on his ties to Will Venable, or Gary Sanchez, based on his ties to Walker McKinven, the new bench coach? Those are the things that they have to determine. And do you have a plan for where Brian Ramos is going to play next season? He's got to have a runway now. You've got to give him, a chance to start with the team on opening day. But is he going to be your opening day third baseman? And if so, where are you putting Miguel Vargas? Or are you giving up on Miguel Vargas? You should. We've seen enough. The Dodgers showed you that there's a reason why they gave up on him. But, is he going to rotate? Maybe at first and even in the outfield. You just got to make sure, does he get every day at bats? Because you want to give him a runway, because he's one of the few prospects that you have that can actually have an impact bat, that he can be a middle of an order bat, but you got to give him that runway. And then what are you doing at shortstop until Colson Montgomery is ready? Is Brooks Baldwin the guy? Or are you going to go with a veteran? Or are you going to go with another Bridge? These are the things that they have to figure out, and it can start next week at the winter meetings. Well, did you know the division rival Royals traded for Jonathan India, or looking for a middle of the order bat, or Matt Boyd just signed with the Cubs, leaving the Cleveland Guardians without another arm? If you did, I'll explain in the next segment why you shouldn't care what the AL Central rivals do this offseason, and we'll discuss it after the break on Locked On White Sox. Hey, I saw Michael Jordan drop 55 at the old Chicago Stadium. Saw LeBron James drop double nickels too. Watched Devin Hester take a punt to the house, and it was amazing. Seeing a game live and in person is always the way to go, especially if you want to see some legends play. And the best place to get the best deal on tickets is using the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time's Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. I monitor the Game Time app for every Marquette basketball game in case I can convince my wife to go, since I gave up my season tickets years ago. And, they've had prices for as low as $1 to some games. Still haven't been able to go because of family obligations, but I still monitor all their home games there to see my alma mater. Plus, I can get a panoramic view of the seat in the app before I buy, so I can see what type of view it is. And with the lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit me 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? Game time. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so I don't care what the AL Central does this offseason. I just don't. That's how deep the Sox are in the standings. They're beyond stuck in the cellar. They're beyond locked in the cellar. They're getting their mail sent there. And they're probably getting their mail sent there figuratively for the next 2 or 3 years. That's how far away the Sox are from even threatening fourth place, for example. So I don't care what the Twins and the Royals and the Guardians and the Tigers do. Really don't. Think about the value the Sox have to make up. If you look at Fangraph's current WAR totals, the Sox are at 24.2. The Tigers are at 37.2. The Twins are at 44. The Royals are at 40.8. And the Guardians are at 39.4. You're not going to make that up by signing Austin Slater and trading your most valuable asset in Garrett Crochet. You're just not. And that's kind of what the offseason is going to be. I'm going to talk about Cal Mitchell being signed in the next segment. Like, that's not going to make up the gap, the talent gap, or even the value gap. And also, Cleveland might rule the division for a while. They might rule the division for the rest of the decade, as they have the youngest roster in baseball. They just won the division, and their average roster age is 25.8. And they still have Jose Ramirez and Emmanuel Clase locked up through 2028. They're only losing Shane Bieber, but he missed most of the season with an injury. They lost Boyd to the Cubs. That they'll find a pitcher to plug into the rotation or into their bullpen, and they'll be fine. That's what they do. Tariq Skubal, he's still in the division for at least another season. And they have the 6th youngest team in baseball. Tigers are 5th. And the Royals still got Bobby Witt Jr. and Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo to anchor their rotation. They got those, Wacha and Lugo for the next 2 seasons. They got Bobby Witt Jr. for the next decade. So that's why I'm not going to fret if these 4 division rivals keep building up their rosters. I'm just not. You could say, well, Todd, eventually they might get good, or you might have the complete Kool-Aid drink, or your burner account that's going to leave a comment in the YouTube community page, because I'm going to get it that, well, they got this young pitching, and all they got to do is add a the bat here and there, and they'll be fine. Guys, I just pointed out this is the gap they have to make up. They basically have to make up 13 wins above replacement just to even threaten the division. That's more than just, well, if Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz's potential is realized, we bring them up, and I keep arguing back. Well, you still got to score runs. And trust me, I would love to be as optimistic as some of these people that I've had discussions with. Love it. I would love to. But as I discussed in the first segment, there's still tons of questions that need to be answered in their own house. I mean, the Sox have to still build out the infrastructure to be a modern organization. This is how long it's going to take. 2027, I'm not convinced that that's when the Sox will be competitive. I'm hopeful because, yeah, you do, if you get 3 or 4 bats and you're starting pitching and your relief group together, yeah, 2027 makes sense, but there's no guarantee. That's why for the next 2 off seasons, I'm just focusing on what the White Sox do. That's all I care about. Taking care of your own house, building up your system, drafting the players that you can develop into superstars, at least through rounds 1 through 5. That's where I would be focusing if I'm the Sox in the draft. I'd be making, my draft plan would be where I'm going to try to find my impact players is in rounds 1 through 5. And if I got to overslot them, I'll overslot them. I'll pay the minimum and I'll just do a bunch of pitchers 6 through 16. And then 17 through 20, I'm going to circle back and see if I can steal some potential first round picks. If I can get my 6 through 16s to sign for as little as possible, and maybe I have some leftover money to maybe steal a pick. Kind of like what they did with the 20th round with that first baseman out of high school. Unlikely that he was going to sign, but if you had some leftover money to maybe say, hey, I can offer you $300,000-$400,000 to pass on going to college, that's where I'd be using rounds 1 through 5 to go for high ceiling players, high school players even. And again, 17 through 20, those high ceiling players that slip through the cracks because they're most likely going to be going to college. If I have enough money left over, maybe I'll try to steal one there. But also building out the infrastructure again, building up better research and data. I love how they have to call it R&D, but data and analytics, getting everything ready. So then that way you can start acquiring players. And also in the international scouting, they've revamped it. Now they got to go recruit these guys. Find, especially your first baseman. That's where I'd always be finding my first baseman is in the international market. Finding relievers, finding bullpen, basically finding what basically, again, stealing more first round picks, because a lot of that is in the international, but you got to recruit them. It's kind of like college without it's kind of like college. You got to recruit these guys and you got to project what they can do in 10 years. So it's a lot of the old school scouting and a lot of the college recruiting. That takes some time, but I'm just focused on what the White Sox are doing. I don't care what the Cleveland Guardians are going to be doing. And you could say, well, what if one of these 4 teams make a major signing or major trade? Won't the Sox have to deal with that player? Sure. Go buy a ticket. See said potential superstar player when in town, because the Sox are not threatening the division for a while. And again, I wouldn't worry too much, as the Guardians only spend money to keep the players that they draft and develop or sign an international free agency. The Royals spent only on Witt Jr. and then smartly spent. So it's not like they're going to bring in a superstar. Yes, they checked in on Juan Soto, but come on. He wasn't coming here. The Twins took advantage of a market anomaly in Carlos Correa and his ankle. That's the only reason why they were able to get him. Otherwise, they never spend. You might have to worry about the Tigers, as they've had acquired superstar players in the past, but they usually give bad deals to like Javier Baez. But a lot of these teams are on fixed incomes, and superstars tend to avoid fixed income teams because they want a franchise with unlimited spending power to make sure they get to the postseason. And what I would say when it comes to the division, I just don't want to see the Sox be the extra wins for, say, the Royals that helps them win in the wild card, helps them get a wild card bid, because that did help at least the Royals get to the wild card. Now they legitimized themselves by winning a playoff series, but if you take all their wins against the Sox, I believe they were just like a game under 500, because the Sox beat the Royals and the Twins just twice, 1 win each against those teams. So you would like to see them win more against the Royals and, say, the Twins. And I'm going to say, let's add that to the list of standards to judge Will Venable on, as you just don't want to be a red carpet for the postseason for your division rival. Be a thorn in their sides, much like the Royals were in 2021. The Sox went 10-9 against that 4th place Royals team that year. Otherwise, I'm not caring what the 4 other teams do until maybe the offseason of 2027. And that is only if the Sox actually show that they're trending towards being competitive. Well, the Sox made a minor signing yesterday. I'll discuss why you should hope that they make a few more like that after the break on Locked On White Sox. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And I always maintain FanDuel's spreads, over, under, and money lines are fun to play, but if you want to win big or at least double your money, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures is the way to go. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all my everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. And hey, feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Right now, overall, getting a 4.5 rating on Apple. Man, let's get that up. Especially there was a bunch of haters at the beginning. Remember saying like, "Oh, he's slurping his coffee and he's talking about this." Hey, well, I'd been out of the podcast game for a while. Got back in. I feel like I'm hitting my stride. I feel like we're having, even though it's a one-sided conversation, hopefully I'm challenging you, I'm informing you, I'm entertaining you. You might say, "Hey, you're still talking about the White Sox." Well, hey, yeah, somebody's. I've got this emotional attachment to them. I don't know why I can't still get over it. Many years of therapy, still can't get over it. But I'm here for you if you're still paying attention. Or again, if you've checked out, but you still want to see what's going on every now and again. And, when you're ready to dip your toe back into the White Sox pool, I'm here for you. Well, I'm not sure Calvin Mitchell is going to be the Sox version of finding Brent Rooker or David Ortiz. At least it could be a good find off the scrap heap. Just Baseball's Aram Layton reports that the Sox have signed the former Pittsburgh Pirates second-round pick to a minor league deal with an invite to camp. And again, this may not be a headline move, but this is a move the Sox should be making all off season. One thing any team should be doing when you hit this big of a bottom, and this is probably the biggest rock bottom that any MLB franchise has ever hit, you should be using this rebuild time to see if you can find some players that you can salvage off the, figurative scrap heap in the free agent market, because those are guys that can either eventually turn into, trade assets or bridge a gap, and I saw it in Milwaukee drink 2 decades ago. They did that with Scott Pasetnik and Brady Clark. Scotty Pods, eventually got the Brewers drink Carlos Lee, and the Sox won the World Series as a result. You never have Scott Pasetnik hitting that 2005 World Series home run if the Brewers don't find him off the scrap heap in 2003. And what happened in 2002, the Brewers lose 106 games. Brady Clark, he helped buy some time for the Brewers in right field until Corey Hart was ready. And then Corey Hart ended up making an all-star team. So taking a chance on Kelvin Mitchell is also a much better, minor league signing with a non-roster invite resource, using those resources and finding those guys than say bringing in Rafael Ortega like the Sox did. Yes, the White Sox wasted time. Not only did they bring in Rafael Ortega to camp, but then they eventually recalled him and he hit under 100. Talk about a waste of time. Now, Mitchell has a career 222 average in 216 at-bats with the Pirates and a career 627 OPS. He's played in 71 career big league games with 69 appearances in 2022 and just 2 in 2023. He was with the San Diego Padres organization last season. He hit 277 with an 871 OPS and 22 home runs in AAA. And he might just be a 4A player because his career AAA numbers are very good. But as I just pointed out with his major league numbers, not so great. 287, 358, 487 slash line in 4 seasons at AAA with 40 home runs. Sox on 35th found that he was once considered, soxon35th.com, great site to check out, found that he was once considered the Pirates' 7th best prospect, drafted out of high school in 2017. He's going to be 26 next season, hits left-handed. And again, not saying that this is a great signing that we should be, be like, oh my gosh, let's go pick him up at O'Hare or make sure we can get him to, get him to the spring training facility in Arizona. But, these are the types of moves that the Sox should be making. Baseball Reference lists him playing all 3 outfield positions. Fangraphs had him at a -4 defensive runs saved in 437 innings played in the major leagues in right field. And he was a -4 outs above average. But again, this isn't wrong giving him a minor league deal in a non-roster invite, because it's better than, say, wasting your time with Rafael Ortega or Kevin Pillar. Like, don't get me wrong. I love what Kevin Pillar said about the state of the franchise last year at spring training. And go find that old White Sox Talk podcast with Chuck Garfien. And Kevin Pillar provided some leadership in spring training, but he provided no production for the Sox. Look at it, consider him one of those veterans that was like, this is a joke organization. And, he ended up getting DFA'd. Obviously, he salvaged his season with the Angels because the Angels are probably a much more serious organization, not by much, but a little. But I don't want to see any more aging veterans getting an invite to camp. I don't want to see Mike Moustakas, like they did last year, getting a minor league invite. I don't want to see those anymore. Get guys like Mitchell, who might be salvageable, because at the very worst, you have some organizational depth. He can go play in Charlotte and cover some games midseason if you have an injury on the big league roster. But at the very best, you might have a player who can play every day in the big leagues. We saw it for a little bit with Corey Julks, for example. Or you might get that dead cat bounce. But get guys that, maybe that can be tinkered by Ryan Fuller to unlock at the big leagues. Let's keep looking for those guys. I know it's not the greatest, but this is the time to maybe try to find your Brent Rooker or go try to find a David Ortiz. Because remember, the Minnesota Twins gave up on David Ortiz. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss my fear about the Sox intentions to trade Luis Robert Jr. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the questions that still must be answered this offseason, why you shouldn't care what the division does this offseason, and the Sox making a minor move that they should do more of. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.